I posted my creek update video today. Someone saw it and sent me this video they took yesterday. What you will see at the end of this entire video is criminal. This is July 10th, 2023. It's a Monday. I thought I'd check into the creeks for a half an hour or so. As of me making this video, it is a week ago. I haven't been going in the creeks as much the last couple of weeks because I haven't felt well. I don't have my mask on all the time, and I had a very bad case of vertigo, just exhaustion, brain fog. Something is in these chemicals that does something to me, may not do things to other people. But virtually everywhere I walk in the creek, chemicals spew out of the sediment. Be careful to look in the light here or you will miss it. There's a massive amount of chemicals coming out from under this rock. Notice how in the shade the chemicals disappear. I can imagine children thinking that it is now okay and playing in these creeks. You can't see the chemicals when they hit the shade. You have to really look for them, but there is a massive amount of chemicals still in our waterways. I have a patient that lives in Palestine that told me he is not going deer hunting this winter because the deer are drinking from the creek. It makes sense to me. This whole creek is littered with coon tracks, and I see deer drinking from the creeks. As I come down the creek, they will run away. Mal, you may not care that wild animals are drinking this stuff, but would you let your dog drink this stuff? These chemicals are most likely either altering DNA or making these animals sick in some way.
Holy shit. Wow. Rock, dude.
Look in the upper right shaded area, and you can see the massive amount of chemicals just coming from this one rock.
Wow. Wow.
These chemicals aren't going anywhere. They're seeping further down into the soil and the sediment. They're not being cleaned up. When you move a rock or you walk through the creek, just look at those chemicals coming down through the sunlight. This is just one rock, and there are hundreds of rocks in this stream section. I have moved hundreds of rocks in the last 5 months, and chemicals spew out of almost every one. Follow the sun in this video, and you can see all the chemicals just floating down the creek. I had learned this technique after filming once and going home and not being able to see the huge amount of chemicals that I was filming. And I realized I have to put the sun in the middle of the frame in order for you to see these chemicals floating down.
Wow. It is furiously coming down the creek.
I don't know what these chemicals are. We should be about to find out, as we took samples a week and a half ago and sent them off to Eurofin's lab. It can't be just straight oil because it sinks to the bottom and seeks its lowest point in the sediment. When I dig, the chemicals pop up to the surface and then they sink back down. If you follow the sun here, you can see all the chemicals covering the surface of the creek just from me walking through the sediment. Look into the reflection of the sun here, and you can see all the chemicals. And notice how they are disguised by the shade. As soon as they hit the shade, they disappear from view. I think I'm going to nickname these deadly vampire chemicals because they are protected by the darkness and they are revealed for what they are in the sunlight.
The whole creek is covered from where I was walking.
Look how normal the creek looks if you see it in the shade. That is very dangerous because we are told that it's safe here. There are no signs in this area of the creek. No signs telling children not to play here.
That's from me walking in the creek.
No signs to tell people from outside of town not to mess around in the creek without protection. Just keep looking in the bright areas of the sun's reflection and you will see all the chemicals floating on the surface of the creek.
It's just gonna go on like that, so we're gonna move on. Oh shit. Look at that. You see all that?
The EPA and Norfolk Southern are proud that life is returning to the creeks. Do you want crayfish, minnows, and all the other wildlife living in this toxic soup?
If you're not careful, you'll miss it. Because you can't see these chemicals in the shade.
I watched a video today of a mother's children playing in the creeks in an area outside of town. People say, stay out of the creeks.
Oh wow.
Kids used to play in these creeks. It's been taken away from us by Norfolk Southern.
Just a little post.
I don't think anybody will be comfortable in these creeks for a long, long time. So I planned on staying about 15 or 20 minutes on this day. And I was about to leave, and I was leaning on my stick in the bank, and I noticed chemicals just spewing out of the sediment here. So I hung out and poked around a little bit, and you can see the chemicals just coming out of the bank.
It's clean.
Keep in mind, we are headed into our 6th month since the derailment and chemical bomb. This is such a shoddy job in the creeks. They needed to drain these creeks and dredge them and dig deep and dig fast, and they never did. They're more concerned with hiding these chemicals from public view than they are truly cleaning up the creeks. The extent to which they cleaned up the creeks after their aerators failed was they used a gravity-fed water tanker and a PVC pipe,
No matter where I put my stick.
and they had a person squirt the sediment through gravity-fed water, which reached probably 6 to 8 inches into the sediment, stirred it up, and sent all the chemicals down the creek into neighboring counties, Negley, Ohio, West Virginia, the Ohio River. Their solution to their pollution was dilution, sending the chemicals down the creek to neighboring counties, West Virginia, the Ohio River, kind of like blowing your leaves into your neighbor's yard. Hey, they're your problem now. But this type of cleanup was for visual
No matter where I put my
placation
stick,
only.
the chemicals
It doesn't get the chemicals out of the sediment or the bank. It removes the top layer. So when onlookers stick a stick in the bank, they're just harder to see. If you look for them, they are there. and they are not hard to find. Keep in mind, they dug deep at the crash site and still came up positive for chemicals. It's the same in these banks, only they don't care. The chemicals are buried deep in this bank, and one day potentially getting into residents' wells. The amount of chemicals wax and wane depending upon rainfall. When I filmed a week and a half ago, it was after a 2-week period of heavy rains, and the creeks were horrific. It is because as the creek rises, it goes higher into the bank and pulls chemicals out of the banks. The banks were truly never touched. In the winter, when the derailment happened, the creeks were much higher. As the creeks receded, the chemicals were left high in the banks. When it rains, the water rises and pulls chemicals out of the banks. If they were going to clean these creeks properly, they would have done it by now. I have spent hours and hours in these creeks on a weekly basis, and I never see workers here. Only on a rare occasion will I see somebody doing something. I leave this day knowing that no matter what we in town reveal, nothing changes.
What you are watching now is a fawn walking and drinking in the very creek that I film in. I can tell you this area is highly contaminated, and this stretch of the creek is in many of my videos, including the 7/10/23 video. This film was shot 7/16/23, 1 week later. As the fawn walks through the creek, this fawn will be kicking up chemicals. You can clearly see this fawn take 3 drinks. Courtney Miller was filming and loses contact with the deer here just as it looked like it was going to stop and drink more. This deer is being poisoned. All the animals that drink from these creeks are poisoned.